the context of examining the connection between artificial intelligence and gender, this session will explore the following questions. What methods can be employed to identify and mitigate gender biases in AI algorithms? How do AI systems influence gender norms, and how can this influence be reshaped in support of gender justice? What measures should be implemented to guarantee gender equality in the development and implementation of AI systems? In our session, our moderator will be Associate Professor Betül Özel-Çiçek. She is Director of Advocacy and Research Department at KADEM. Dr. Betül Özel-Çiçek currently serves as the Director of Advocacy and Research Unit at KADEM and is also a lecturer. She holds a bachelor's degree in English literature, a master's degree in Sufism, and a PhD in comparative religion and feminist theology. Her professional journal includes managing large-scale international and educational programs and advocacy projects, leading innovation in NGO structures, and contributing to academic and popular publications. She has over 20 years of experience working at several NGOs, and her essays and translations are featured in several publications. And our speakers are Karen Souzo-Peza, Senior Executive, Salesforce from Belgium, Mona Sengo, entrepreneur, founder, and co-host from Awaken Your Human Design from Canada, Barbolo Chete, Independent Culture Consent from Indonesia, Association Professor Francesco Alessandro Lizzi from University of Bari Oldo, Moro. And the QR code will be available through our session for your question to the panelists.
Thank you. Welcome all. Welcome to our second session today. This session will focus on AI in relation to socio-cultural norms and gender. We have 4 experts on the area from different countries and different fields of expertise. We will focus on the current situation, and we will propose our suggestions for the betterment of the current situation. We have 2 theoretical framework of presentations and 2 practical suggestions. Well, as we all know, misogyny is a global pandemic, perhaps older than the Black Death itself. And we also know that the patriarchal socio-cultural norms are not reserved for one culture or for one country. This is a struggle we all have to overcome altogether. Technologies, like as any other devices, in fact, and actually are only devices. They either can be used as tools for the betterment of the society as a whole, or as a means of oppression and discrimination. A culture can be technologically backwards, but in terms of gender justice, it can be more progressive than a culture that is technologically advanced, but culturally oppressive. Unfortunately, technological development does not equal to social advancement or gender justice. But human beings are a strange kind. They can be transformed by the tools they made up. AI technologies, while as for now are usually used for the augmentation of the current bias and negative affirmations about gender, can be an effective device to the improvement of women and other disadvantaged groups. We believe this must be a universal effort and endeavor. We are the ones who must initiate that. That's why in this session, we all together from all over the world will discuss the advantages and the betterment of the AI technologies for the social welfare and betterment of justice, gender justice. And our first panelist is Karen Souzo-Peza. She's a senior executive and a fervent advocate for diversity and inclusion, and she is globally recognized for her leadership in STEM. Encouraging women to surpass norms, she is a sought-after international speaker addressing various topics, such as diversity, inclusion, data, and AI. a graduate in nanotechnological engineering and holding a master's in sustainable materials engineering from Ghent University, Karen has received nearly 20 awards for her outstanding contributions. And the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you very much for receiving me here today. So I want to bring something to the audience that you can take home today, something very tangible. So I like to talk about 3 things you need to know about technology and society. And I am an engineer. I joined engineering because I find it fascinating. I find it, for example, fascinating how these scientists could get this picture of Gustav Klimt and turn into a deep fake of a person which is actually speaking, and you can really see the features of the person. This was one of the biggest motivations for me to become an engineer. And it's, you know, you can create art with deepfake, which actually got quite a bad connotation, but also have a lot of positive applications. I'm not going to spoil too much for you. I think Borbala is going to have a fantastic presentation on that. But if you see the examples that you have today in arts, like, for example, in the museum of Salvador Dali, you can even be greeted by Salvador Dali himself and take a selfie with him. Deepfake can support you in arts and innovation, can support you in entertainment, can actually create a lot of fantastic educational videos, can support you in training. It's a fantastic tool for accessibility. It's very good for law enforcement and for investigations. There are actually a lot of good applications of this AI branch. However, not everything is beautiful as it seems. And sometimes you also find applications which don't contribute to society. Like this video, for example, which I'm going to be showing now.
We've seen stories about these kinds of AI phone calls where criminals call you up using a deepfake voice, pretend to be in trouble, a family member who needs help, and then they try to take your money. But we haven't actually heard a recording of one of these calls, as far as I know, until this. A police officer got the call, moved quickly to get the recording started, thinking he was simply getting a scammer at work. Instead, he got much more.
Yeah.
You do know who this is, right?
Yeah. Are you okay?
Sergeant Joel Lewis of the Scottsdale Police Department does have grandkids, but they're young, too young to drive.
They had a terrible car accident.
Are you okay?
So he knew right away when this call came in that it was a criminal at work, and in his mind, a pretty good actor at that. First thing that we hear in the recording is, he says, "Grandpa." Did that sound real to you, like a real voice?
Oh, yeah.
Did he sound legitimately scared?
Absolutely.
I was rushed down to the hospital and been treated, but the lady in the other vehicle, she told the officers that I took the red light.
Okay.
They're charging me for reckless endangerment. I need your help.
It sounds panicky. So, how would I react to that as a grandfather?
Unfortunately, deepfake has also been used for misinformation, for bullying, for digital abuse, harassment, fraud and scam, and blackmailing. In my home country, Brazil, this is a very common practice. And now it's so advanced that it's not even voice. You actually see the person that you know talking to you, asking for money, asking for help. It's always urgent. They're always in a situation that they need your urgent help, and you don't have time to think about it. You just need to act. And the situation can get even more serious. This is an example of a tool that has been now taken down, but you could find not so long ago available in any social media, in which basically you can get the face of anybody and turn it into a deepfake. In this case, this is a British actress, which for the example of the marketing campaign was put in a deepfake which had some degrading actions towards her and the way that she was dressed. This all makes me think of how do we prevent these things from happening? How do we prevent deepfakes from getting into such a stage? This example, which I like a lot, and it has some correlation, is from a chatbot that was made available in the former Twitter, today X, called Thai Tweets. And what the big tech company did is created a chatbot with AI and put no safeguards on it. The idea was that the chatbot would learn as much as possible from the internet. And it took 4 hours for trolls to turn it racist, to ask for genocide, to ask for the comeback of dictators. It had to be taken down in 24 hours. And it's not only about biases in technology. It's also about the biases of people. We all have biases. Biases were created in our heads to protect us in the cave times. When you come out of the cave and you see a bear which is killing someone, you don't want to be killed, so you create a bias to protect yourself from bears. But the problem is that we don't live in cage times anymore, and these biases are still there, and these biases are all in our data. A lot of the things could be prevented if we would have more women in technology. If you look at these women, I hope you can recognize them. These are the computers. Just like a teacher is teaching, a computer is computing. Because in fact, in the 1940s and in the 1960s, IT was a female-dominated environment. Not so much like today, but yes, until the 1960s, computing was a female thing. And unfortunately, as computing started to get more visibility, as started to seen as something that brings money, that requires leadership, women were pushed out of computing science. And in 1984, we were about 37% of computer science bachelors. In 2016, 18%. This number has been stagnated for a while because of all the efforts of society to bring more women into computing science, but it's still very slow, very low. And this all brings a massive gender data gap. The thing is, today, we don't have enough data to tell how women experience society. And the data that we have, the data that we are feeding into artificial intelligence models, is biased because we didn't include women into research. This example, I hope someone already spoke about this example during the summit because it's so incredible that when car crashes were tested with puppets, most of the companies did not take into consideration women's bodies. And because of that, women are 17% more likely to die in a car crash. And since 2023, there is now a female puppet created in Sweden, which is available for companies to purchase. But this means that the vast majority of the women in this room today, the vast majority of the women that you know, are driving cars which are very unsafe. And yes, women are 17% more likely to die in a car crash simply because this was not taken into consideration. There was also the example that was mentioned by First Lady about the biases in hiring. There was a company that decided to automate how they are hiring, and basically, if you put the word woman in your CV, the word woman would be translated by the AI as negative, and it will give you less points to be selected. But how do we change these things? Because AI is everywhere today. Tell me one industry in which AI is not. AI is in arts, and AI is in manufacturing, and AI is in pharmacy. AI is literally everywhere. And honestly, don't get me wrong, I'm an engineer. I love AI. I think there are a lot of fantastic applications. But I want to be part of it. I want to have AI models, and I want to have technology that work for me. And there are a few ways to do that. For example, this voice cloning technology, which is available in the market, can you clone any voice? It says, well, you may only clone your own voice because you have the rights to clone your own voice, and there will be a voice capture to make sure that this voice is yours. But we need to find ways to regulate that we can simply not put a random artist's voice to be cloned. AI ethics is going to be the key, and I am really hoping to hear more about that today, but unfortunately, we're not there yet, and I would really like to have a broader discussion about how we can achieve a more safe technology to a more safe society. Thank you very much. These were my thoughts, and I'm really looking forward to the questions.
Thank you. We'll have first a round of presentations by our panelists, and then we'll pass to the rounds of questions. Okay, and our second speaker today is Moana Sangio. Did I pronounce it right?
Sango.
Sango.
You were very
Moana
close.
Sango. Evet. Yeah, she is an entrepreneur, founder, and co-host of Awaken Your Human Design. She's from Canada. And Moana is a compassionate communication and human design expert and speaker. She provides innovative guidance to transform life's chaos into harmony through structure and boundaries. This is, I think, what we all need. Having lived in 4 countries, Moana brings a unique perspective to her work, engaging audiences with animating storytelling and personal insights, helping them navigate relationships with greater emotional depth and understanding. And today, Moana will make a presentation to us about how AI can help us create an inclusive and compassionate work environment. Thank you, Moana.
Thank you, Betul. Hello, everyone. I am very excited to be here with you today. So, like I was introduced, I am Moana Sango, a compassionate communication and human design expert and a keynote speaker. And today I will be talking about some of my personal experiences with gender bias at work and the emotional and mental toll it takes on you. So we do spend half our lifetimes at work. So we want to make sure that it is as nourishing as it can be possible instead of draining our souls, as I would put it. Okay, so I told you about this. Our first story, or my first story, is I want you to imagine that you are helping your boss pack up their things, put them into boxes, and you're walking your boss out into a taxi. If it's a boss you don't like, you might be very excited about this, but in this scenario, I want you to imagine this is a boss that you actually are very inspired by. This is exactly what happened with my first job out of university, where I was working at an investment firm, and this was the only female executive in a sea of male colleagues. And she came before anyone else to the office. She stayed later than anyone else. One of the days, she tearfully admitted to me that she barely sees her children, her marriage is falling apart, and she's scared because one of her bosses doesn't like her, and she doesn't know what's going to happen to her. And weeks later, here I am helping her pack up, and I am just amazed. It's like, how could someone who put so much of her soul into this career of hers be fired, essentially? How did this happen? And I just didn't understand at the moment. And of course, this has affected me even today, thinking about it. And I thought to myself, if there was more objective ways to look at your workplace performance instead of likability, this kind of thing could have been completely avoided. And after she left, then I'm like, oh, what happens to me now? What, do I have a job? And a executive's assistant thought, okay, maybe you can help me out. So I started working for her, but she had some very strong negative opinions about a colleague of hers. So she would definitely take the time to let me know about this. She's like, oh, don't talk to her. Oh, she doesn't do her work. Like, make sure you don't associate with her. And I'm like, okay, well, that might be your thoughts, but I will make this judgment for myself. So when the same colleague had to go for a work vacation, I decided, hey, I would be happy to cover for you. And she did not like this. She took me into an office, looked me straight in the eye, and said, just because you went to this university doesn't make you special. Who do you think you are? You are just another temp. I can replace you like this. There's 1,000 of you out there. And this kind of treatment continued about 15 to 20 minutes, and my jaw is on the floor, and I'm like, what do I say? She's my supervisor, and I'm just standing there horrified, and I just let it continue. And later, I approach HR, and I tell them what happened. I'm like, I was psychologically abused. And they look at me, and they're like, were you, though? And I'm like, wow, okay, so you're minimizing my experience. That's not what HR is supposed to do. So the emotional and mental burden got to the point where I can't stay anymore. So I left, and I thought, okay, this next position that I'm at a new job, new colleagues, new job expectations, it will be great. And shortly after, my female colleague said, oh, everything you saw on the job description is not actually true. I'm like, wait, what do you mean? It's like, no, you ever expected to do all this other stuff. And I'm like, what other stuff? It's like, oh, you have to stock the fridge with fruits. You need to get lunches when there's client meetings. You have to fetch coffee for the morning meetings. I'm a marketing person. Why am I doing all this? And shortly after, I realized these same female colleagues had to do job duties outside of their job description as well. And I thought to myself, okay, there's also only one female lawyer at this law firm, and she was miserable. And later on, I found out she ends up leaving. So why is it that the women are expected to take on extra tasks, extra job duties that the male counterparts were never expected to do? So again, if there were tools that had transparent job descriptions, that were looking at how communication was happening within colleagues, whether it's through email or through looking at what's happening in meeting minutes, these kind of things could have been avoided. So it had a horrible, horrible toll on my mental and emotional health, as you can see. When you continually face this kind of gender bias, your sense of self-worth just degrades over a period of time, and you are just in a constant mode of stress. And you bring that home with you. You carry that with you all the time, and it's not something women necessarily openly talk about, maybe to each other, but not with their male counterparts or at the world at large. So some of the things that would assist with this sort of problems is, of course, noticing the patterns of bias that we have at work. Where is it that people are doing this? And it is not something that I'm just blaming the other gender. Females do it too, right? I just demonstrated that it was my female supervisor that ripped me a new one for no apparent reason. So this needs to stop, right? We need to be speaking to each other in a much more equal way and reinforcing boundaries and having more empathetic and honestly compassionate communication with each other. So this is where AI comes in. So we can be using tools like Textio, which can find where there's gender-biased language happening, or Cultivate AI, which monitors communication patterns and behaviors in the office. And lastly, Modern Health, providing mental health resources. Because again, like, you might be in a place where you don't know who to turn to. So if there's a spot where you can just let your feelings and emotions be and have someone there for you, even if it's AI, it's better than having a mental breakdown somewhere else. So some real-world applications of how Textio can be used is these job descriptions, you can make sure that they are unbiased, and during performance feedback, making sure you're staying very objective at your performance reviews. Cultivate AI can flag harmful communication practices that are happening at work and in real time. And lastly, Modern Health, which is going to provide some mental health support. So, some of the takeaways I have for you is workplace discrimination has a toll on you, and you carry that with you. And over time, it deteriorates your mental health, which in effect does affect your career, because you do not show up in the way you would have if you're not carrying around all this emotional baggage with you. And lastly, we need to start working on having more empathetic workplaces, and we can use AI, that's an option. So this is something I'm bringing out. So if you would like to have some tools that I spoke about and more, scan the QR code. I've actually made a list for you. So you can go ahead and get the list and see in which ways you can bring that to your own workplace, because we are, again, spending half our time at work. Find all the tools that can make it more pleasant. I'm going to give you 2 more seconds to scan those codes before I go on to the next slide. Amazing. Oh, we're still doing a few of these. And it'll also have the summary for the talk. So if you're like, she's talking too quickly, you can read my notes. Amazing. So what I would like you to go ahead and do is actually start having those conversations at work with your colleagues, with your supervisors, saying, okay, how can we bring AI to bring in more support at work to make it more equitable? How can we have some tools that can actually sense bias detection happening? Because it's invisible. Sometimes you're just doing it almost like a reflex. You don't even know what's happening. And lastly, just champion for yourself, right? Maybe they'll be like, no, AI doesn't work, but you just have to stand up for yourself. Say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to stay an extra hour late. It's not fair. So with that, I'm going to pass it to my next speaker. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Moana, for showing us very practical solutions on how can we foster well-being in a workplace. And our third speaker panelist today is Barbara Çete. Is that right? Barbara Çete. She is an independent cultural consultant and has more than 20 years of experience as an advisor in intercultural communication, culture management, and advocacy. She is a culture critic and expert in bridging gaps and building tolerance between communities from different backgrounds through cultural exchange. Based on Budapest and Jakarta, Barbara has led museum projects across Europe and Asia, focusing on making exhibitions accessible to a wider public, especially youth. She is a passionate advocate for the importance of inclusivity in culture and education. And this is very important and interesting subject that you are going to present. As we all know, museums are not that, were not that innocent at their beginning. And they were, when they were first established, and they were somehow like the monuments of the hegemony of colonialism and all kinds of accumulation of wealth and knowledge. And now it's very accelerating to hear that monuments of hegemony of colonialism can be used for the betterment of the all disadvantaged groups, especially youth and women. And let's hear your presentation. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So thank you for this opportunity to talk about both museums and AI. So I have some questions for you on museum practices. You might have some ideas already what AI tools can be used in a museum context. So we would create something from what? That's the initial question. So of course we have a large data set, and what can be the output from this? So this trained data set can show us what? So most probably just what we already, how it was fed, no? So actually, I would like to animate you a bit with the second question of mine. My question is simple. Hands up of those who think that AI could be used for actual curatorial practice. Who would trust a museum project to be curated by an AI tool? Oh, I have someone already, yes? So I have some. Let's maybe find some answers at the end. So in less than 9 minutes, we might know a bit more, I hope, and we could, of course, continue this discussion. But thank you for your optimism, and we will see how it goes. And so my third question or thought on museums is bringing artifacts to life. So if you recently have visited a museum, you might saw there, for example, reanimated artifacts which are animated from pieces, or maybe you receive some kind of glasses and you have this experience to walk at another era. So AI tools are present in museums. We agree on that. So let me give you some examples, and we will find at the end the answer of this question. And I'm really happy that there are some positive voices on that. So I don't know if any of you heard of this Irish case. Actually, I found it out as I searched for this presentation, this Irish case. So in Dublin, in 2023, AI tools were asked about Irishness. And there was a very intriguing exhibition about Irishman, Patrick, a certain Patrick, and you can see that it's not necessarily flattering, the image, what Irishness brings through IA tools. So my example here is like both on IA and also, what can be found. So as we said that we have the data set already fed, and okay, so it's gender, but let's say it's rather about toxic masculinity, about drunken boys. So it's not maybe what this museum, actually of the Museum of Immigration of Ireland, wanted to show about, someone who left the country 200 years ago and actually wanted to pay honor, for the grandfathers there in Ireland. So let's see another examples now, more on women. So actually my time, recent 2 years, I spent in Indonesia, and I find this example fascinating. And this is like a personal story, how the female gaze can enrich an exhibition. So here, the curator was actually the great-granddaughter of the main figure, who was the wife of the first commandant of the Air Force of the independent Indonesia. And so it's a personal homage of this great-granddaughter, but also the story, I think, from a gender perspective, gave a very refreshing lecture on this era. So, of course, we have seen plenty of exhibitions already about the first decades of independent Indonesia, but this, enriched by oral history, by personal journals, lots of personal details, gave totally complementary view, which is really for the enrichment of all the publics, and especially it was very nicely welcomed by the youth. So that's I think one of the main challenges of museum is to get rid of this dusty image of, there are old knowledge and no one can have really access to. So I think it's a very intriguing example of that. So in January 2025, there will be an exhibition in the Louvre, Abu Dhabi, about kings and queens of Africa, forms and figures of power. So we may know that in Africa, there were really strong female characters. No, we agree on that, even matrilineal heritage, which by the colonial times were kind of erased. And this is to enrich, again, this perspective, at least feminine figures as the mother of the heir could be represented recently. And again, the perspective, which eventually AI tools could deepen, could be enlarged and enriched like this. On Hungary, I have two excellent examples of recent, let's put it this way, feminist exhibitions. The contemporary art museum, Ludwig Museum, was founded 35 years ago. And at that time, there were less than 200 artifacts. 8 from women, so like less than 5%. So you can imagine if we make a selection of those oeuvres, what could be shown as female art. So now there's a 2-chaptered exhibition which shows first like as models and also like authors, so like artists, and then eventually creators, quota of women there. So, and there's very nicely can be linked to this Guerrilla Girls action, where there was in 1989 this kind of provocation. Do you have to be naked as women to get into a museum? So now in 2024, the answer could be yes, it can be different ways. So now you can be a curator and you could be more represented there. My other Hungarian example to bring here is about a painter couple who have like a common exhibition, and actually it's now at that preparing for the exhibition that they revealed that actually some of the main oeuvres, the paintings, which were thought to be painted by the husband, actually are of the wife, who had, the kind of role of raising the children, finding some time for her, who was also a renowned artist, actually a pupil of Henri Matisse. So, finally now we kind of give justice by this recurating process to eventually female artists. So, I have a list of recommendations with the small time which is left for me. Let me go there. Which is like, you might have guessed, so what's your, if you revisit your opinion, what you would say? Like, would you give, based on this set of data, the curatorial role to an AI tool? I would say, like, with concerns, no? So I would still consider that a curator is like also an author and kind of artist who makes, like responsible selection, and we can't replace kind of the human brain here. So we absolutely have to take into consideration that eventually there are bias, not necessarily like gender for women, but like marginalized groups shall be represented, and this is the curator's role, and AI is not yet there, but we will maybe hear more later on that. So that's my main recommendation, that, yeah, we have to see how to do that. But so I would urge cultural sensitivity in this AI training data, and I would like to emphasize the importance of including diverse perspectives, those of women, in data input. And I would like to highlight also these ethical curatorial practices, so highlighting, as some of my examples showed, women's history. And also, there's this recommendation on transparency and accountability, especially on historical narratives. And we can imagine now, like, I might not have frightened you, I hope, with AI, because I would see also perspective, for example, on cross-cultural collaboration. So now there are examples of collaboration, for example, of Southeastern Asian museums, also European museums. So there are also issues of like intellectual property, which are brought into consideration. And finally, I would like to get back what was said before, that this digital inclusion, gender accessibility, and ensuring equal access to women, also participating in the process could be a key element on that. And let's not forget, like also on museums, the sustainability concerns of maintaining such systems. So I'm looking forward to your questions or remarks, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I think it was Virginia Woolf who said anonymous is a woman. And from your presentation, Borbala, we gathered that sometimes the artist is more than not the wife, huh?
Could be.
Yeah. Okay. And our last presentation would be with Dr. Francesca Lestrandolisi. and she is from University of Bari Aldo Moro from Italy. And she's an associate professor of informatics at the university with over 20 years of experience in AI research. Her work spans knowledge engineering and digital forensics. Since 2013, she has been an elected member of the executive board of the Italian Association for Artificial Intelligence, and she is the WP leader in the Future of AI Research project and focuses on ethical and legal acceptability in human-AI symbiosis. Francesca is actively involved in public engagement activities, particularly on gender issues in ICT and AI. She is the only computer scientist in the Faculty of National PhD School in Gender Studies and participates in the Cost Action U Gain. And today she is going to talk about ethics and gender for a responsible and trustworthy AI. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the introduction, and of course, thanks very much to Kadem for the invitation to contribute to this summit. I feel very honored to be here. So, it's before everyone says that artificial intelligence is the latest technological evolution that is transforming the global economy. It's playing a major role in the so-called fourth industrial revolution and is deeply changing our society. As such, it brings disruptive technologies. So we can talk about the AI disruption, as this article from Forbes says. And as such, it brings disruptive technologies that are those technologies that have the potential to supersede an older process or product or habit. In order to reveal how these technologies can be socially and economically transformative, and to identify the side effects of the disruption it might bring about, it is necessary to take a responsible approach to them. Responsible research and innovation, RRI, is just the approach promoted by the European Commission in the context of the Horizon 2020 strategy, which allows us to anticipate and assess potential implications and the societal expectations with regards to research and innovation. RRI consists of 5 thematic elements, as you can see from the picture there, among which ethics and gender, meaning that a responsible approach involves holding research to high ethical standards and ensuring gender equality in the scientific community. Now, the disruptive technologies brought by AI, although successfully applied in a growing number of contexts, have turned out to suffer from a major problem: the lack of trust from adopters due to several flaws in the way these technologies are designed, developed, and applied in risky domains. In particular, so-called black box systems, such as most current applications of machine learning algorithms, are the main source of concern since they suffer from biases, more than the other kinds of systems that are called white box. But what are biases? Biases consist of 3 components: stereotypes, that are cognitive shortcuts that human beings have developed during their evolution. Karen was very good at explaining what happened during the prehistoric times, and prejudices, that are opinions not supported by evidence, and discrimination, that is how people behave in front of the diverse. Machine learning algorithms can play a key role in this vicious cycle by amplifying and perpetuating biases that come from society to the AI system through data. So it's not a kind of magic. Biases come into AI system through the data. At the European Union level, the problem has been faced in the ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI, where the requirement of diversity, non-discrimination, and fairness is explicitly mentioned in the list of desirable properties that should be satisfied in order to enhance the reliability of AI. Diversity has many facets, ranging from race to gender up to cultural background. The reason why today we are focusing on the gender dimension is that among the many facets of diversity, gender is a paradigmatic one. In particular, we need to stress here that gender bias concerns all, not just women. Not to mention the fact that gender equality and women empowerment is one of the goals in the United Nations Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development. So, an important question arises. How can we trust AI that does not take into the gender dimension into account? Yet, in spite of the importance of the gender dimension, the relationship between AI and gender is a challenging one, as also testified by several reports from international institutions since 2019. The main reason for these difficulties is just the presence of gender bias in many AI systems. What are the AI applications that can be considered risky for gender equality? Here is a non-exhaustive list. Of course, due to lack of time, I will go into details of only a couple of them. The first case I would like to consider concerns face recognition. An Afro-American researcher at MIT Boston, Joy Bolanwini, was the first to discover some years ago that face recognition systems are better at recognizing white faces than black ones. In particular, their performance is excellent in the case of white male faces and very bad in the case of black female faces. Here, the so-called intersectional bias plays a role in the curation of the dataset used for training these systems. More precisely, black female faces are underrepresented in the dataset. The story of Bolanwini and her studies on gender bias in face recognition became the subject of a docufilm in 2020 that I strongly recommend to watch. It's called Coded Bias. A more recent example comes from the world of chatbots, in particular those based on generative AI, such as ChatGPT. A report of UNESCO appeared earlier this year reveals alarming evidence of regressive gender stereotypes in large language models. As it can be seen from this session with ChatGPT, stereotypes about professions still appear. Doctors are male and nurses are female. So even the frontier of AI systems does not meet the expectations as regards gender equality. Is there anything we as AI scholars can do to mitigate the biases in AI? Yes, we can debias either the data or the model. In data debiasing, we apply corrective actions on data, for instance, on image datasets used to train an artificial vision system. Conversely, in model debiasing, we apply corrective actions on the model, for instance, on the word embeddings used in natural language processing. An interesting initiative on data debiasing, for instance, is the project Gender Shades, proposed by Joy Bolanwini together with Timnit Gebru. Some of you may remember her name because she was fired by Google in 2020 for her critical position on large language models in contrast with the company. Everything happened during the pandemic, and in that specific year, I have to say. In Gender Shades, the aim is the contrast to intersectional bias in face recognition. The main deliverable of the project is a data set that is really representative of the wide variety of human faces. Besides bias, another issue to address is the female underrepresentation in the field of informatics. This is a big problem. Actually, the two issues, bias and underrepresentation, are tightly connected. These charts from the AI Index Report 2024 show the gender distribution of bachelor's graduates in computer science, computer engineering, and information technology at the European level. Very few women nowadays enter the field of informatics, even less study and work in AI. The project UGAIN just ended, intended to address the digital gender gap in studies. UGAIN has established a European network for gender balance in informatics. In this project, we worked very hard to deliver policies and recommendations for different stakeholders in each stage of the academic career. I'm very proud of being part of it. So, to conclude, there are promising directions to follow to ensure that ethics and gender are combined in approaches for a responsible and trustworthy AI. First, developers are increasingly aware of the gendered impact of AI, especially among young users. Human-centered approaches are becoming, therefore, more and more popular to promote the design and development of AI technologies with the user in mind. These approaches are the subject of investigation in the Italian project Future AI Research, where we are considering the ethical and legal acceptability of the symbiosis between humans and AI. In addition, fundamental rights impact assessments can be employed to identify biases which result in discrimination around the many facets of diversity. Last but not least, contemporary feminist theories and gender studies can be a great source of inspiration for AI ethics frameworks. For instance, in the FAIR project, we are rethinking the notions of bias and fairness through the lens of performativity theory by the American philosopher Judith Butler. Particularly interesting, and this is my last slide, are the so-called gendered innovations promoted by Londa Shipinger from the Stanford University that employ methods of sex, gender, and intersectional analysis to create new knowledge. Indeed, what we really need is a gendered innovation in AI. It is not just to increase the number of women in AI or to mitigate the bias in AI systems, but also to raise new research questions in AI. For instance, to question the foundations of the discipline, such as the scientific method employed. It is a deep cultural change, as we have witnessed it, for instance, with the advent of gendered medicine, that allows us to overcome all the limits of centuries of science without women. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy with the course of our panel. Our panelists, all four of them, has addressed very, very important points regarding AI and socio-cultural norms and gender. And I would kindly ask the audience for a round of applause for all of them. And in this section, we are going to ask some questions to our panelists. I'll make the first round of questions, and I kindly ask you to, add your questions if you want to ask some to our audiences, to our panelists. However, I would ask you to state to whom you are asking your question, or is it a general question for them all, okay? Thank you. Karen, my first question is to you. How does AI alter traditional family structures, and what are the gender-specific implications of these changes?
So in my presentation, I was talking about deepfake and how the technology can be used today to simply create a voice and call someone. And I don't know about you, but my grandmother is on WhatsApp. And I have the feeling that when I was a child, when I was growing up, The grandparents were seen as the matriarch of the family, and there was this whole maturity and knowledge surrounding it. But what I see today in terms of family structures is that grandparents are relying extremely on younger generations, their grandchildren's, to try to understand technology. So there was a bit of a change in structure from us gathering all the information from our grandparents to now our grandparents gathering information from us. And I find that very interesting. My grandmother got one of these calls. Someone created an AI deep fake and called her to ask her for money. And I already spoke to her about that, so she was already informed, and luckily she didn't fall into the trap. But she is very often coming to me to say, Karen, is this news true? Karen, how do I protect myself from this information? Karen, and more I see these things happening. So in terms of changing familial structures, I think this is a very prominent example. And I think in terms of gender structures, as everyone in the panel is saying, there are fantastic applications for AI. And I think now there is such a movement to get more women into technology and AI. This is going to bring a lot of independency to women as well. Yesterday, we had a lot of heads of state talking about how they want more women working, more women in technology. These are going to be very accessible workplaces for women. But we also need to be mindful of all the problems that AI can bring. We need to demand governments to protect us. We need to demand companies to protect us. Because, as I said as well, if you just open technology to people, there will be a lot of people that will misuse it.
Thank you. And Moana, your first question. How can AI systems be designed to both challenge harmful gender stereotypes and promote compassionate communication in workplace interactions?
Thank you for asking such a great question. So, like I mentioned, there's many different ways that AI can start making workplace a little bit more equitable, because there are gender stereotypes that happen at work, whether you are aware of them or not. So we can start mitigating some of that which is found in our language, in our expectations, particularly around emotional expression and leadership qualities, which tend to often be assigned according to your gender lines. So by using things like sentiment analysis, AI can assess workplace communications and end up flagging and highlighting bias, which ends up helping to create an environment that, shows our contributions as workplace colleagues as equals. So furthermore, we want our compassionate communication to be at the forefront of it all, right? And we want empathetic generation response, because so many times we're just like rushing to like answer a thing, but you might not be thinking about, okay, is this that colleague that just, had a baby a couple months ago and they're still adjusting to coming back to work, that kind of thing. So to be more cognizant of people's personal circumstances with their personal life as well. So things like emails are crafting responses with people's life outside of work in mind, because we are multi-dimensional people. Work is not everything, and we want more balanced interactions.
Thank you. And Borbola, your question. What do you think can be done for a more gender-balanced representation through AI tools in education and more particularly in museums?
Thank you, Betül. So what I described, I think that already representing a multitude of voices, that's my first proposition. So as we saw, representing women, but not just women, but marginalized groups, and giving voice to them, that's, I would say, a first step, that we can have this pool. And also what was mentioned, to train the tools, you know, to ask appropriate questions, to have this curating sense is a second thing. And also, which is like maybe related to my first, is to find, so this a bit rewriting this canon process, so to find, rewriting what is selected to represent, to find strong female models, but also to give broader expression. But also we can talk about, as you mentioned, especially youth. So to empower also those who participate, so through trainings, through scholarships, also to broaden those who really work and get the use of it.
Thank you. And Francesca, your question. How can ethical frameworks for AI development address gender biases and inequalities?
Well, as I mentioned in my presentation, for sure, the ethics guidelines, at least at the European level, which was the first one in the world to appear. And then after that, other countries in the world, they proposed similar frameworks. Now we have plenty of these frameworks. We have the opposite problem, how to find the common parts between all of these and to coordinate and to find a common ground to build up systems. So the gender dimension is accommodated in the point of diversity, non-discrimination, and fairness. So if you pursue this goal, you should be able to also address correctly the gender dimension. But as I mentioned in my presentation, we need other ingredients to make up the complete recipe, because technical solutions are not enough. I mean, we are facing a socio-technical problem. So we need to work along two directions, on the technical side, but also on the societal side. So the diversity is important because when you build up a team and you make your and you apply your ethical framework, it's important to have representatives from all the groups in the society. So, because otherwise, if you don't have a diverse team, I'm afraid that it won't work. It won't work because you need different points of view, even in applying these frameworks. So I think this is very important. So diversity in the composition of the team and diversity as a requirement in this ethical. There should be a match.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And Karen, for your second question. Can AI help bridge the digital divide in underrepresented communities, especially for women and minorities in STEM fields?
So, yes, I think that AI can help bridge the digital divide. Will it? That's what I'm not sure. Because it's not only about technology, as she was saying, it's also about the social, economical aspects. Will we have governments supporting this digital divide to be bridged? Will we have incentives? Will we have financial incentives for people to learn? Will we have financial incentives and sponsorship and the governmental attention for people from underrepresented communities to have the minimal digital literacy? That's what I am not sure. And that's what I do every time I go on stage. I try to ask for people, anyone here, to ask more of governments, ask more of companies that they can support to bridge this gap. Because very pragmatically speaking, Can AI help bridge the digital divide of underrepresented communities? Well, AI is going to provide a lot of jobs in the future. Whoever is an underrepresented community can join these jobs, can be part of it. As I said, it's going to become more and more a type of environment in which people will be welcome. It can also help governments to underpin who are the underrepresented communities that don't have representation. So there are several ways AI can support that. But will it? That's going to be very specific on each culture, I would say. One of the suggestions that I would make, and I think this is something that was also mentioned yesterday during the opening keynote, we need global leaders from everywhere in the world to get together and discuss AI. We need global leaders from everywhere in the world to come together and discuss, what are you doing in the EU? How did you do it in the US? How did you do it in the UK? How is it in Brazil? They are now about to draft their AI regulations. And exchange information, learn from best practices, work together. A few specific governments might have the issue of how are we going to regulate AI? People will say we're trying to regulate things, it's not going to look good for us. Well, you need to work together. You need to make sure that you're getting the correct information, that you're learning from the mistakes, and you need to communicate to people that there is something much bigger than that. We need to give support to underrepresented communities. So, answering the question, yes. But will it? That's what I want to see.
Thank you. And Moana, your second question. In what ways can AI tools support healthier interpersonal communication and emotional intelligence while fostering gender inclusivity? I'm having difficulty pronouncing this word. Inclusivity in professional environments.
Of course, happy to answer. So when we are communicating, it isn't something that we're always cognizant of what we are saying, how is it actually being received by the human on the other end, right? You might just be trying to express yourself, but not really cognizant of, okay, how did I make that person feel? How did I make this person, think about the thing I'm trying to express to them? And, this takes a lot of practice. So when you don't have this practice, having some tools like AI can help. And it's very difficult, right? Because how someone is going to react to you is very dependent on what's their cultural background, what's their gender, what's their age. And now there's more and more remote teams where you're working with colleagues all across the world. So they might have a very different daily lifestyle than yourself. So to make sure that you're talking in a way that it's still respectful to them, and vice versa. AI can help create more inclusive work environments where every team member ends up feeling more valued, more understood, and we're not just reinforcing stereotypes that, we might even, without being aware, default to because, we just don't know any better sometimes, and that's just, part of being human. So let's all try to make work a more supportive and empathetic place. And if we can use AI to do that, great. If not, I trust you to just sometimes open the line of communication and ask. It's like, hey, did that thing I say make you feel a type of way? And, just work on it.
Thank you. And Barbara, for you, how can museums be more inclusive and what AI tools can do for that?
Thank you. So, as I presented, historical gender roles represented in museums are to revisit. So I think once we make this more inclusive, that could be a key point, and how to do that. So we have to use, and we can refer to actually this data set that we have. But on a practical side, because I rather spoke about the content side on using AI tools for museums, but there's also this administrative and managerial side, AI tools could be excellently used for tracking visitor statistics. We can tailor actually museum experiences to that. But also very practically, it can be, when you enter to a museum space, or like now we might have we have these tools, you know, for language localization, and also let's imagine other disabilities, hearing impairments. So there are things which can be facilitated through AI. So I think that these are key components, and let me just see my list, what I try to draft. Yes, I think that eventually, which is now, so maybe you have this feeling that more data are accessible, we really need threads. So that's actually the opposite. So we need storytelling, but this storytelling, you know, if you enter to the museums, that can be multiplied by this experience. So we need a balance of personal, which could be fed by this. So maybe you have entered a museum space where you have like drawers, you can kind of choose, it could be personalized, tailored. So there are fascinating possibilities of have more personalized museum experience, actually tailored to public, to children, or to those who are interested into something which might not be the mainstream thread of that exhibition. So I think that there's plenty to attend, and yeah, I am really excited about how it could be used.
Yeah, thank you. And lastly for you, Francesca, what are the main ethical concerns in current AI applications regarding gender, and how can these concerns be mitigated?
Yeah, so as mentioned in my presentation, the relationship between AI and gender is a critical one, a difficult one. So I provided a list of applications of AI in several risk domains, like credit or hiring and other. Face recognition and so on. But generative AI also is very worrying for several reasons. I mentioned that there are several techniques for bias detection and mitigation. So we have tools for that. We, as from the technical side, we have provided the solutions. The point is that current AI systems, the ones that are going to dominate the market, are not really transparent, in a sense, open. So it's really difficult to know how they work, what are the data sources they have considered for the training, and so on. So there is also a matter of transparency in that. So I think we need to do a lot of work, of further work also from the legal point of view. We need to regulate this. And we are, at least at the European level, we have released very recently this AI Act, which is intended to regulate the usage of AI, especially in risky domains. So we are confident that this will work, and it will be sufficient for us to have a reliable AI applications in our everyday life in the future. In the present already for some of them, and in the near future.
Thank you. And there are some questions from the audience, very interesting questions, and I'll just make a quick round of questions for you all, and I'll just sum up some questions for Borbola. As generative AI continues to evolve, how can we preserve authenticity and ensure that human creativity stays distinct from AI-generated content?
So how to ensure credibility?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, so I think that's as I mentioned, intellectual property or how. So of course, that's when you have maybe your data set in a curatorial process. And of course, you still need, I eventually put more accent on the creative process of curating. But of course, that's very important that you have to do your fact check. So how you can ensure it. There's still this academic background that has to be. You have to have very accurate questions. So maybe it's like a set of questions. You have to dig eventually deeper. But also, I think you can't avoid to really have. And I think we had complementary presentations. So you may have recognized I'm not from the IT side. So maybe I can have a complementary response on that. But I think that's very important to find both credible information and, yes, so my point of view, I am enthusiastic about this kind of user experience in museums, so get something more enjoyable. But of course, it can't be compromised. So I think that's really the main challenge, that it shall remain something which is reliable, even if we open to eventually to several voices.
Thank you. And Francesca, for you, they say that your presentation gave them hope, and they kindly ask you to give a little bit of examples of gender innovative projects that you're talking about.
An example of gender?
Gender innovative projects that you were talking about in your presentation, the last two ones especially.
Gender shades?
Yeah.
Innovative, gender innovative.
Gender innovation, an example. The example of female dummies in engineering, for instance. That was a gender innovation engineering, because in the past, the tests were not done on female dummies. And they discovered that, especially for pregnant women, that was a risky, really risky application in engineering. In medicine, there has been, we are witnessing a real revolution, because the gender dimension was ignored in medicine for centuries. So male as a neutral, also in anatomy or also in diseases, the symptoms of diseases, for cardiovascular diseases, females show different symptoms from males. So it is important to have this gender difference to ensure that there is equality in treatment for the two genders, because we have different physiology. So it seems absurd that for centuries it wasn't like that. So I hope I have answered the question of some examples of gender innovations.
If they want to elaborate more, they want you to elaborate more, they would, find you after the session. Okay. And Karen, for you, there is a question about the negative effects of AI on human psyche and psychology.
On what? Sorry?
Yeah, how...
Neuroscience and psychology.
Psychology.
Okay.
Yeah. Psychology.
One of the negative effects of AI that comes to mind is that recently, and especially during COVID, there were a lot of chatbots that were developed to support people that were struggling mentally. And as I said, AI is starting to be regulated now. So they were trying to make a tool to support people that were struggling mentally. It was COVID, it was very tough. And because it was not precisely medically based, some people actually decided to end their lives after talking to such chatbots, because the chatbot reacted in a way that was unexpected, and because sometimes the chatbot even said, if you are so bad, maybe you should end your life. And that's why I say it's important to regulate. I don't want to be calling for the regulation flag. I think if you regulate too much, you are going to kill innovation. But right now, the innovation that we're doing is also like selling a car without seatbelts. So I remember this as being, I think, the most most dramatic example of AI in psychology not being used for good. This could have been avoided if the app which was created was done with sufficient medical data, with sufficient good quality data, that it was tested broadly, but apparently that was not the case, and that's why the situation happened as it did.
Thank you. And lastly, for Moana, and I think you all might want to answer this question if you prefer. Moana, in many societies, women still face strong discrimination and inequalities. Assuming that gender equality is a good thing for everybody, I sense some sarcasm here. How do you think that AI might be used to diminish discrimination and inequalities in the most discriminatory and unequal societies?
That actually answers the third question, so I might as well hit two birds with one stone. How effective? So, when you want to be working on gender inequality, right, you want to be doing it from many different fronts. So that's what I was trying to demonstrate in my talk in a very short amount of time, because it's coming from, you know, your job description. It's coming from your communication at work, whether it's an email, whether it's a meeting, or it might even be something as you know, sneaky as a phone call. So when these things are monitored, not just by humans, because humans are infallible, also having tools that will help. So that's one way of doing it, but another is honestly awareness, like bringing, and that's hard. That's hard, and it's very uncomfortable, because that means you have to have difficult conversations that don't feel good. And it's like, hey, you know that the way you look at me when I say things, it's not okay. And that person might not have known at all. And it's like, oh, okay. So it starts with having a lot of awareness and difficult conversations, and just do it to the point where it doesn't feel so awkward anymore, because I promise you it will feel very strange when you're doing it. So again, yes, AI is there, but it's not going to do anything if we ourselves don't start advocating for ourselves or even our colleagues. If you notice a colleague that's going through a thing, it's like, that's not right. Like, maybe they are not in that mental state to speak up for themselves, so speak up on behalf. And, don't be afraid to do it.
Okay, thank you. And this is the final minutes of our session. Thank you for all for coming and listening to us, and thank you for all our panelists for their contribution. And I would like a round of applause to the finalists. Thank you.
Thank you all panelists. Now I invite Associate Professor Saliha Okur-Gümrükçoğlu, Academic Chairwoman of the Board, to the stage to present the certificates to our panelists.
You could take this off now. Yeah.